Welcome to Bicycle Retail Radio, the bicycle industry podcast that brings retailers, vendors, advocates, and thought leaders to the mic for honest discussions about the latest issues facing retailers while taking an in-depth look at the person within the profession.
Registration is officially open, and we want you to join us for the second annual NBDA Retailer Summit, May 22nd and 23rd in Bentonville, Arkansas. Our 2024 program features 2 dynamic days of presentations, panel discussions, and breakout sessions aimed to unite retailers and suppliers in conversation. Tickets include an event gift bag, tailored educational events, networking cocktail event and select meals, early access to the Bentonville Bike Fest, not to mention ample riding time on world-class trails. You won't want to miss it, so don't. Get registered today at nbda.com.
Hey listeners, this is Heather Mason, NBDA President. Welcome to Bicycle Retail Radio. Today we have a very special episode. This is Brent Emery, co-owner of Emerys, a Wisconsin-based bike store that adapts bikes to the needs of every rider. We're excited to chat with Brent as we cover the unique needs retailers should possess to best work with adaptive bicycles, whether it's fit, customization, billing, and more. Every retailer, listen up. And if you're listening to this one, you can also watch it on our YouTube channel. Brent is actually in his store and will take us on a unique walkthrough of the bikes that he has. All right, enjoy. All right, Brent, I am so excited to have you on Bicycle Retail Radio. We're going to talk through how any retailer can expand to serve the adaptive cyclist and as a retailer play a very important role. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it's been great. Good to see you at the show. And Cabdo was great, and MBDA is fantastic.
It was a pleasure to see you at the Cabda show. Yeah, kudos to Jim and his team for putting on a fabulous Cabda Midwest. Thousands of retailers were through the door, and it was great to see you and your wife stop by the MBDA booth. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right, so I see if you're listening to our podcast, when you get home, tune in to the MBDA YouTube channel because you're going to be able to see this podcast as we go through here today. Brent is going to be showing some images. He's actually in his store, so having a chance to watch this podcast on the YouTube channel will be great. But let's jump in. Brent, what prompted your start providing adaptive bikes at Emerys?
Well, my mom and dad started our business in 1963, and I joke a little bit about it. Do you know back in 1963, there were people with disabilities back then? Always have been, always will be. And it's something that's a normal condition of humanity, and it's normal for us to want to help.
So based up in Wisconsin, been in business for several years now, since 1963. And, there's a lot of people out there, a lot of diversity in cycling riders. And as an industry, I think even more as of late with the People for Bikes event at Shift, there's been a focus on making sure we're providing bikes and opportunities to ride to all cyclists. So really excited to get into this conversation because what my goal is, Brent, and I know yours too, is that every retailer listening, with what you have in your store and just a couple opportunities to expand to brands can serve every cyclist, right? You truly believe that, right, Brent?
Yes, it's something that right now I think a lot of bike dealers don't service the needs of the adaptive community out of either fear of what the heck are we going to do? How many different disabilities are there? Or even just the liability. And I tell them, if you're repairing bikes, providing disability bikes is not any different. So it's something that everybody should jump in and do it. You can start with some of the more simple disabilities, Downs, autism, cerebral palsy, things like that, there's pretty straightforward things to do and bikes to get. And then as far as some of the bikes where you have to modify things, as you gain experience, you'll be able to handle some of that. And that's something that as we get into future years, again, one of my goals is to help educate the industry on some of the weirder modifications or things like that to help out.
The bicycle is such a fabulous tool. I mean, it puts a smile on my face every time I go for a ride. And I can see you, Brent, like you must feel the same way. So we want to make sure that everyone can enjoy a life on 2 wheels, a life on 3 wheels, a life on 4 wheels, however, to get out on those trails, on those rec paths. So lots to get into today. So how did you get into the industry? Your family had the business and then you just grew up in the shop, or tell us more.
Yeah, we had 7 kids in our family. Eventually, everybody worked in the business, and right now, myself and my brother have taken over things a number of years ago, so we're partners. And we had customers that came to us over the early years that said, they had a problem body, this or that didn't work, and the usual thing was that you need a 3-wheel bike or this or that. But as we started to get more requests and see more types of disabilities, we reached out to some of the specialty companies that make hand cycles and other types of unique bikes that are really more. You want to think of this as really at-home physical therapy. There are some people with a missing leg or arm that are really wanting to get the bike just for true sport riding and enjoyment, and even sometimes competition. But as far as the majority of it, really, this is at-home physical therapy that's accessible 365 days a year. It makes a massive difference in people's lives.
So I'm imagining, the shop starts in the early 1960s, and over the years, I'm sure your product just expanded. Was there a point where your family realized that focusing even more on the adaptive rider was like a part of your business that you wanted to ramp up?
Yeah, I took a couple of years that I was out of the business on the international bike racing circuit. I got a medal in the Olympics in 1984. When I came back into the business, I was like, well, what opportunities were we going to do with the business? How can we expand things and look to it? And as we were doing more adaptive things and really making some modifications, doing a lot of custom fabrication, I was like, well, we shouldn't shy away from this, because we had to make a decision. We were starting to do more and more and more. And it's like, well, it's almost an inconvenience to the business on some degrees if you really aren't used to it. But we were like, well, if we back off, that's really not serving our community. So we just jumped in the whole hog, and we've been doing more every decade. And now we're pretty well the #1 spot in this part of the country for bikes for people with disabilities.
You were telling me a story offline as we were preparing for the podcast about the Children's Charity of Wisconsin approaching you to help assemble or prepare some bikes for some children in their organization. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, Variety Children's Charity is actually a nationwide and even international organization. Um, so each state has a different focus, and the Wisconsin chapter focuses on children with disabilities compared to education or different community projects. So Wisconsin is very much providing, whether it's a speech device, a home modification, a vehicle modification, a missing limb, prosthetic. But they have the Kids on the Go program, which is really to get kids active. And that's where they really fund a lot of disability bikes.
I think that's fabulous. And as you mentioned, Emerys is the #1 place in Southeast Wisconsin for adaptive bicycles. Your selection's not limited. And I think now you have over 1,000 stock and customized bicycles or that you've touched over the years. But I know it didn't start like that. You had to start somewhere. And I really want to give our listeners who are retailers themselves, shop owners, glimpse into how they can get started serving this unique, diverse customer, because lots of opportunity here to change people's lives. So let's talk about that a little bit. You're serving a very diverse customer crowd. What does a typical customer look like for you?
Oh, well, as far as the types of disabilities, we do a lot the way it's worked out more with children than adults, but we still have adults with disabilities that come through. I just had a veteran that a local organization funded the bike for him. They gifted it to him. 6'4", but he's got neuropathy. He can't feel his feet anymore, and so it's something that we had to have a trike, but a trike that fit somebody really big, so we had to do some modifications that way. But we also did things that we use the pin pedals, which let his shoe really grip the pedal well. We had the electric assist on it because, again, without the feeling in his legs, he's able to walk with canes and everything. But with this bike, it's really going to let them go shopping, go for fun, access this community. So it's going to be great. So adult three-wheelers, recumbent three-wheelers are pretty straightforward and easy to do for some of the more simple things. We do a variety of bikes with the, let's say, an adult mountain bike or a children's mountain bike, and put the oversized stabilizer wheels. They're like the size of small bike wheels, but they're training wheels, and they're heavy duty enough to really use on a consistent basis. But then we'll put things like taller handlebars on them, shorter cranks, different types of pedals. So we sometimes start with a stock traditional bike and make it an adaptive bike. We also have companies, let's say like Riften and Freedom Concepts, that make some bikes that you really see almost all the time in physical therapy clinics. They're great for riding on a linoleum surface or in a gym, but they don't do so well in the real world if you have a little bit of a hill or a headwind. So we sometimes even modify those with reduced gearing and extra capacity that really gives people wings. I would rather have somebody pedaling super fast and really going to town and end up having to change that gearing as they improve and gain strength, instead of having it so difficult that they can barely get along and they need a push to do it. So giving them that wings right up front changes their life.
Brett, I just want to take a moment here. I'm thinking about the fact that your customers must be a variety of ages, and they're coming to you probably with their caregiver because maybe they're not always able to communicate what their needs are. And it's a very I would imagine it's kind of challenging as a store owner, as a bicycle mechanic, as someone who's trying to, outfit the perfect bike for the rider, to figure out exactly what they need. And you have probably some bicycles, adaptive cycles that are stock, but I bet almost all the time you're taking the customer and listening to, sensing what their needs are and making sure the bike is set up for them. So I'm imagining there's a lot of customization and just taking the time to truly figure out, right? I mean, that's, yeah, job well done. I can't, there's a lot there, right?
And things are starting to get better from a variety of companies as far as what they provide. But like we've invented indoor riding stands for any type of disability bike. So it gives the family the ability to use the bike if their family schedule is really tight or if it's bad weather. We've invented different pedals, which are really much more secure and a much taller heel cup. We remanufacture brake levers to fit tiny hands, but they're still a locking lever. So when they're loading the child on and off the bike, if they've got a real disability, the bike isn't moving around on them. So again, a locking brake lever that's a really short reach is a neat thing. But companies like Riften, it's kind of a menu system. So you order, the particular kind of seat, the particular kind of torso control, if you want a chest harness, different types of foot straps. Same thing with Freedom Concepts. But then we have other bikes that we just start from scratch and we just make what we need.
And I'm thinking about a person who maybe is struggling with Down syndrome or cerebral palsy or some other things, that they might not just be going out on that bike path alone on their bike. They're probably going to need someone with them, either on foot or on a bike themselves, or if we're dealing with someone who is blind, it would need to be a tandem bike, right? So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I'm sure you probably must work with the caregivers or the people assisting, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. First of all, we have a pretty extensive questionnaire that we send out to each family before we meet them to get an idea of all of those things, what the exact nature of the disability is. And on some of the more complex names for disabilities, we just, look it up on a medical site and find out really the very real details of that disability. Then we find out through that questionnaire, where they're going to ride, how they're going to ride. Does anybody else in the family ride? Are they going to be walking alongside of them? Even where they're going to store the bike, because not everybody has that ability to store a bigger bike. So sometimes we have to try and find, things that are a little bit more foldable or compact or lighter weight to deal with. So when we boil all that down, it helps define what the bike's going to be.
So I want to get into a lot of specifics, like your assessment process, the space in your store that you have dedicated for this. But before we do that, I'm imagining over the years, you've had so many customers come and you've really just changed so many lives. Are you noticing that the more that your customers ride the bikes that you set up for them, just the better outcome overall?
Yeah. A number of years ago, we did a presentation at the Medical College of Wisconsin with Variety Children's Charity and also Dr. David Waters, the local pediatric specialist. And the title of it was The Medical Benefits of Adaptive Cycling. We actually showed them case study after case study after case study of truly needing less hamstring surgery and less Botox with the regular movement in the legs, better spatial awareness, better safety decision making, better sleep, less agitation, better weight management, better in so many different directions. But that's only if it's used on a consistent basis. And so we actually train the families to really understand that dynamic, that this really is at-home physical therapy. It's not just a fun thing to use once every couple of weeks. If you kick their butt out on the road and get themselves on the bike as many days of the year as possible, that's when we see the magic happen. And it's absolutely consistent that the families that get the kids and adults on the bike as many days of the year as possible have the most stunning results.
I'm so happy to hear this. So, what I'd like to do is just dial into a little bit more about the actual retail environment and how you do go through the process of making sure you're finding the right bike for the right rider and matching everything up, and then some considerations for the retailers to keep in mind. I see you're in your store, and for our listeners, when you get home and you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see to Brent in his store on the video here. Would you say you've dedicated a certain percentage of your shop to adaptive cycling needs? Is there a special area set up where you'll do like a pre-assessment with the rider when they come in, or could you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah. So we've got not a really big building. It's something that I almost have a little bit of sympathy for some of the more involved cognitive people that come through that it's where it's a little bit of an overwhelming environment. All those bikes, all the colors, all the textures. I mean, a packed bike shop is a pretty intense place to be.
Right.
So we tell them right up front, first of all, prepare to goof off and have fun. We really try and keep it light. We really focus on talking with the person with a disability, especially even if they have a more serious cognitive disability. You think that, well, I'm not talking to anybody, but honest to goodness, believe me, they are in there. In so many cases, the families are so happy that we're actually talking with the person with the disability rather than directing our attention just to the family. So that's a big part of it. And learning basic sign language, the thank you, you like color 1 or color 2, some really basic things that way will help you communicate. But a lot of it is really just keeping it light and enjoying the process with them. We do try and retrain the parents and caregivers to do as little as possible. We've seen kids that are completely wheelchair bound where we expect them to get portage over onto the bike independently. And the parents are like, no, they can't do that. We'll help them. And we're like, no, just give me a few seconds to be wrong. Let's see what they can do. And all of a sudden they're just like, whoop, whoop, whoop. They do it. And it's just, the parents are just like, whoa, that's kind of cool.
Wow.
So we had a young lady a number of years ago with significant spina bifida. She's absolutely wheelchair bound since she was 5. And I think this was when she was 9 or so years old. And they come in and the dad's like, we're here for the adaptive bike. And we go through some question and answers. And I was like, well, I think I got the right bike. So I pulled the bike over and it's a pedal bike. And he's like, no, bike she can use with her hands. And I said, you just got to give me a few seconds to be wrong here. So we do things. I've invented 34 and 28 tooth fixed gear cogs. Nobody in our industry makes that, but we have them made for our store. And significantly small chain rings up front, very small cranks. we reduce the effort to the point where it takes a whisper to push it along.
Wow.
And the dad is not a happy guy. He's really kind of not happy at this point. He pulls me on the side. He's like, "Don't build her hopes up," because again, all she's known is being in a wheelchair, and we're telling her she's going to pedal with her legs with her friends, and her legs are paralyzed. But I had her just push up in her wheelchair and move her hips front and back, and I noticed that generated some thigh movement, which generated some knee movement. And I have her portage herself onto the bike, which the dad's really kind of not happy at this point. And she can only pedal a little bit here. And I said, well, hold on a second. Her legs have never gone in a circle her life. So I push her around the shop, and being a fixed gear, it forces her legs around. She's able to go this and this more. And I said, well, let me give it one more lap. I push her around and store another lap, and she starts pedaling the bike. The dad literally almost fell back like it was an alien abduction, like we just did something and transplanted somebody else with his kid. Now, she has got the kind of progressive spina bifida. She will eventually lose even some of that capacity, but we've given her a couple of years where she's riding a bike, a normal looking bike. And again, we've got modifications with the chest harness and different type of handlebar and pedals and this and that, but it looks as close to a normal bike as possible. That is incredible for the family. It's incredible for me. It's something that we really enjoy, that part of the process of thinking outside the lines. And I think that's the takeaway for a lot of dealers, is just don't default to the most restrictive, out of the factory disability bike that's just an easy thing to do. Look for opportunities to really expand your skills and also challenge yourself to find a better solution for the rider.
Yeah, you really need to approach this with a creative mind, with an open mind. And I mean, the situation you're describing, Brent, it's like, wow, I can't even imagine being in the store in that moment, and the energy and the emotions that were happening. And you mentioned the assessment questionnaire that you send, or you provide the family with before the cyclist comes into the store. So how are you getting connected, or how has the word gotten out that Emerys is offering adaptive cycles, and how do people, is it a phone call that stimulates this pre-assessment questionnaire, or just walk us through that a little bit? So if a retailer listening wants to get into offering adaptive cyclists bikes and gear, how do they get the word out, and what does that process look like?
There's a number of local charities for the different types of disabilities. You can reach out to them, let them know that you're available. In Wisconsin, we have a very progressive state as far as the funding for bikes for people with disabilities, the Iris program for adults, and then the Children's Long-Term Support Waiver if you're under 21. And so it's something that they have a caseworker that's assigned to that person or to the family. The caseworkers are the ones that will get a letter of referral from the physical therapist that says that they've used an adaptive bike in physical therapy, and I think it'd really be good for them to have one at home. And then they'll reach out to us and we'll follow it up. We also have a variety of our customers, bike clubs, local media, local community newspapers, radio shows that have done features on us over the years. And every time one of those comes out, we get more phone calls coming in. We also give away a few adaptive bikes for free every year to the community. It's something that, 60 years of business, we've been very fortunate to be successful. So we like reaching out, and as kids outgrow some of the bikes, we recycle those, some of it with Variety Children's Charity, some on our own. But this year we'll give away 8 or 10 disability bikes into the community completely for free.
Wow. Amazing work you're doing. Amazing work you're doing. So you've really connected with the community. They know that you have bikes to solve needs for all sorts of cyclists. So they call, or they come in, probably the family or the caregiver, maybe the cyclist too. But the first step, you said, is really this pre-assessment questionnaire. And is that just helping you figure out some more definitive questions about what type of disability, what type of bike, how, even how many wheels, hand or pedal? Is that what you're looking for in this pre-assessment questionnaire?
Yeah, because we'll ask them what experience they've had or what exposure they've had with any kind of bike and how recent it was, what worked on it, also what didn't work. We find out what parts of the body, let's say if they're a stroke victim, if it's a left side affected or right side affected, if it's paralysis in the legs, we need to know if it's complete paralysis or partial paralysis. So that's the kind of details in that. And again, we'll find out, the physical therapist's name. So if we have any questions, we can reach out to that person. And so it's a pretty long questionnaire, but most of it's yes, no, real limited stuff. So the families really don't have a difficult time filling it out. We always let them know if there's an individual question we're just not sure of, just no problem. We'll figure that out in person.
And so have you been learning, you must be learning as you go along because, I'm seeing now adaptive mountain bikes. I'm seeing adaptive mountain bikes with suspension. I'm seeing trikes. I'm seeing little, adaptive kids bikes. I mean, there's a lot of styles out there. Am I wrong? Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just feeling like this is a whole category that really we could have a
Oh, yeah.
whole showroom for.
Yeah. Well, and actually, I think that's a good segue to go in. I've got a whole lineup of bikes here, so we'll back the camera up and we'll take you through some bikes and show the different styles. I'll talk a little bit about each of them. So
Excellent.
we'll have that going right away.
Oh, that's fabulous. Thank you. I love that you're doing this podcast from the store so we can actually see the store set up. And it's beautiful, by the way. Excellent.
Thank you. So this is a Riften bike. So this is one of those bikes that comes right out of the factory. This is actually the last of their previous generation. They just redid them so that instead of this push bar for steering, they now have a rear steer that actually is a little bit better. But this company has all types of things for families with disabilities. It's like, almost like a medical supply house, but they do adaptive bikes as well. And so that's an easy bike to do because of the fact that you have a menu type system. You order it from it, and when you come in, the majority of those we send out pretty well the way they are. Sometimes we've got a much better pedal system that we created that we'll do, but except for that, it's pretty straightforward.
Oh,
So
wow.
this is a Mica, and same thing. It's an out of the box bike, but very neat as far as the tilt on the seat back is adjustable. The arms are adjustable up and down. They've got a pretty reasonable pedal, but like I say, sometimes we'll make a better pedal than that. Rear steering, and that one's actually a pretty lightweight bike.
Brent, can I ask you a question? So this is a family business. You've been there most of your life, living in and out every day. Are you the one who's helping most of the adaptive customers, or are there other people on your staff who are trained and knowledgeable on this product as well? You know what I mean? Is there like is a certain specialist on your team, or how do you handle the sales process and who's helping outfit the adaptive cyclists?
Yeah, so I will do the assessment and write up the specifics and quote and details on that. Our head mechanic, Chris Reimer, does the production on most of them. I do some of the machining on some of the specialty parts. And then Ramiro helps out with that final fitting when they come in. I will still generally do that final involvement with just making sure that the exact placement of everything, the body posturing is as optimal as possible. So then we also educate the family when at the time of pickup on, for the kids that are growing, how this is going to grow with them, what the adjustments are, what the maintenance is, so things like that. So by the time they leave, it's pretty complete.
Excellent, excellent. This bike looks very interesting too behind you.
Yeah, so this is a hand cycle, and so this is what we consider an upright hand cycle. So the body position is very much like you'd be in a wheelchair, and there's a variety of models like that. And then so this one is a recumbent hand cycle. So again, a little lower to the ground. So when we take a look at something like this, uh, uh, some of the people that have very stiff legs where their leg literally doesn't bend will go with the recumbent style. Also, some types of challenges or disabilities, it's easier to portage into the recumbent. It might be easier to portage into the upright hand cycle. So that becomes self-evident during the assessment that we do. Well, we're actually trying them on a bike, so it's a matter of which is getting on and off. Another thing that we've done for a lot of the lower bikes, especially, we make what we've branded as the Emerys Towering Lighthouse. It's taller than the roofline of the average SUV. It's a little thicker than a regular bike flagpole, so it doesn't whip around as much. We put the new generation of super flash lights on it, but that way they are truly visible in traffic out on the road. So it's something that, they're a slow moving vehicle in almost all cases, and we really want them to be visible out there. So we even address that.
Brent, I have to be honest, as you're going through showing each of these models of bikes, I've been in the industry my entire life, and I did not know that there were so many different adaptive bikes. And you mentioned vendors like Riften, Amtrak, Sun, Top End. How has inventory been over the past couple years? And are the supplier relationships very similar to like what we have with maybe some of the major big box brands, or?
Yes, it's very much like Trek and Specialized, Cervelo, where we just order bikes and you put in an order and get it. But during the worst of the pandemic a few years ago, it was tough getting anything. So some of the bikes that we ordered in the disability end of things, we waited a year or 2 years for. So it's something that things are really catching up now that parts supplies are catching up.
Mm.
And as far as I've got a couple of more bikes I just want to go through real quick. So this one, we're starting with the regular off-the-shelf mountain bike. We will put the oversized stabilizer wheels on it. This one is in production right now, but we have the shifting only on the one side and braking over on the one side, because this person really has got great use of their right arm and very little use of their left arm. And we have a multi-position shaped handlebar, so it's something that wherever they feel that they can get that best position during the ride, and if they tire, that's going to be something that will help them out.
And Brent, is that something that your mechanics, so you modified that bike, so I'm imagining your mechanical expertise has to be very high level, or?
On something like that, that's something that I think any bike shop can do, because of the fact that it's really, pretty traditional bike parts, but just combobulated in a little different configuration. So,
Okay.
the bike that I've got here, we started off as a regular Trek 20-inch kids bike. We added the oversized stabilizer wheels, put on shorter crank arms, different pedals. This one, we changed the rear wheel to be a fixed gear wheel. And then put a stem riser on. And so this one is actually one of the used bikes that have come back in. This one's just about to be donated out for free into the community. And so the young lady outgrew this and got a different bike from us. So it's something that with the modifications that we did, she was struggling on the physical therapy bike. She was barely pedaling along. And with our bike, she was just zooming all along. And that activity, that neuron connectivity, is the key to making real physical progress. Instead of struggling along, it's just like they're just going to it and zooming. But when they get on the bike that many times per year, and it's really persistent, it's connections that stay in it. Just her progress has been just fantastic.
Oh my gosh. And you're donating that bike out. That is so nice of you.
And then this is another one that started off as a traditional 20-inch wheel bike. We have the assist wheels, again, shorter cranks. This has a pommel type seat, which has the sides that come up and a pommel in front. So it really helps hold the child in the center of the seat. This is a handlebar that has hook releases. So it's something that you can get them on and off. Let me just pushing that one up a little bit more.
And how nice it is to be able to, as a child, go out and take to the streets and ride with your friends in the local park and not be limited. It's really opening the world for these kids.
And then this bike is a side-by-side. This is basically a party on wheels.
It looks like a party on wheels. That looks great.
Yeah, this one we're actually going to be delivering in the next day or two. We're just putting some accessories on it. But the young man who's going to be on the one side, he's 6'3" and still has a little bit more growing left in him. Mom is only 5'6", and dad is 6'2". So we've got everything on the parent side, so it's very adjustable. We made it so that we're putting stem risers on to bring the handlebars up a little higher to clear dad's knees and the son's knees. So we're doing some things to raise that up. Again, we changed the pedals, we changed the cranks, we added the electric kit, we added our towering lighthouse pole, and a variety of other things. But this is just going to let them have the ability to get out the house. The mother, particularly, has been basically landlocked with this kid for almost 20 years.
Oh.
And he's very, very agitated. He's very just bound up, and he needs to get out and do something. But also mom does too. And so this is really, it's going to be fantastic for the whole family.
You're changing their world. This is I love your showroom. I am so thankful for you for thinking to show us the bikes during this. This is fabulous.
And then this, I'm just going to bring up a little bit so that people can see. So we also do machining on cranks to have the shorter holes. It makes a much shorter pedal stroke, but then as the person grows, they can move that out. And that really is going to be a one and done bike. So this bike, we changed it to a fixed gear. We've got some other modifications. We also have a bike-to-bike hitch that we're putting on here. So this piece will go onto the front wheel. That'll stay on there all the time. There will be a corresponding piece on the back of the parent's bike. And when they're either, let's say, on a bike path, for some of the people that aren't good at steering, or if they're cognitively not reliable and they're going to be all over the place, where they need to, they can hook up the bikes front to back and ride it like a tandem. And also, if somebody poops out, especially some of the kids with some of the low tone, they'll let them ride for as much as they can independently. When they poop out and they're like, okay, geez, we're a mile or two from home, and I'm going to have to get off my bike and walk and push the other bike. Well, no, they can just hook them up together and ride like a tandem and get back home.
Oh, that's fabulous. And is that an aftermarket part, Brent, or is that something that your team created there?
Yeah, I invented these. We actually do a lot of them. The front part is pretty straightforward to install, but the back part, because the rear dropouts by the rear axle are so different from one bike to another as far as where the fender holes and everything else are, you have to do a little bit of MacGyvering and grinding on that, but that's something that pretty doable.
Brent, you say it and so nonchalantly. You're just like, I invented this. This is a big deal. Like, you are solving problems. You are MacGyvering.
Yeah. And so here's another bike that we're taking basically a stock type bike. And so this child needs the seat belt. So we actually use a retractable seat belt on it. They do need a grab bar on the back, but also because of the fact that this child is very cognitively impaired, very strong, but very cognitively impaired, we move the shift levers to the back where the parent is in complete control, because this child is so strong. If they're accidentally moving to a harder gear, they're going to be going so fast that the parents are going to be chasing and running full tilt on them. So this way the parents can be in complete control of the gearing. And then also we've got steering ropes. So this is a real simple, kind of a crude way of helping the parents with the child with steering. And so that's another thing that not difficult to do, but it's something that sometimes is needed, as in this case.
Right. That makes me want to ask the question, have you seen or witnessed some riders come into the store barely capable of riding, and then you do outfit them on this bike, they get set up, in the next year or two, they've really just really taken to the sport and they're able to pedal and steer so much better?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we've just story after story after story. It's incredible. We built a bike for a young man a few years ago that I told the family one minute. I said, I have no idea what I'm going to do, what the bike's going to look like, how long it's going to take, what it's going to cost. Because when we met him, he came in, he only had half arms on both sides, and below his belly button wasn't born with anything. And when we met him, he was 4 years old and 19 inches tall. And it took me a while to imagineer and create stuff, but we created a bike. He is pedaling go to town, yeehaw, active, independent, all by himself. And a lot of people in the community, if you say the name Francis and an adaptive bike, they're like, oh yeah, I know about that kid, because he's just like, and otherwise his only way of mobility is to pull himself along the ground with his elbows, and that's it. We put him on the bike, and he's a kid on a bike.
Brent, I'm hearing and seeing that you are, I want to say like a wizard. Like you care genuinely, and you listen, and you do this assessment, and you think about the resources that are available to you, and you come up with a solution. I know you're mechanically inclined. It sounds like you have a great team that's mechanically inclined. I mean, I think you said that, I think I read somewhere in this podcast planning that no is not in your vocabulary. Do you only see yes? And do you like you must have just this amazingly positive attitude.
Yeah, well, first of all, I give a usability and correctness guarantee. So we hold ourselves accountable that we're providing a right solution. And over the years, with again, we're getting up just under 1,500 bikes even at this point over the years. I've had to change out a couple of bikes over the years. And we did one recently. We really thought that the young man, because he was so flighty, so beyond agitated, so uncooperative. If you saw him walking down the street, you'd be like, that's a normal kid. But until you try and restrict him and hold him in a little bit, he's like just utterly resistant. So we had a bike with a seatbelt. We had a bike with more involved foot straps that really held him in. And he did terrible on it. We put him on a more traditional upright three-wheeler with nothing on the pedals. And it took him a little while to figure out how to keep his feet on the pedals. But the mother is like, I don't know what kind of holy water we sprinkled on him, but he's so much calmer at home after we get done with a bike ride. He rides the bike. He wants to be on the bike. He doesn't want to jump off and get away like when he was bound in. So, after all these years of doing it, that's a bike I was wrong on this last season here. And, so I'm still learning all the time.
So I want to get in specifically for retailers that are listening who want to start being able to serve the needs of adaptive cyclists. And I know, Brent, that you believe that any retailer can get into this, what I would say, rewarding category. I mean, I don't know. I don't hate to use that. I think it's probably very rewarding. And so first we have to make a commitment that we want to serve the adaptive cyclists. And then I'd say, what would you say the next steps are, Brent?
Yeah, well, then it would be aligning yourselves with a couple of vendors so you know what you really want to, which direction you kind of want to go in. Then committing some of the financial resources to at least having a couple of bikes around so that you can have people try them. And you might even start looking just in your community for people that are selling used disability bikes just to affordably get a couple of bikes into your possession as a shop. Then connect with physical therapists and just even pick their brain. Just say, hey, we're going to be new to working with people with disabilities. Some of your clients, you use bikes in physical therapy. Can we pick your brain a little bit? So that's something that's an easy way to do as well.
And I'm imagining that the retailer would want to make sure that they have the right person on their staff who is patient, who is inquisitive, who is creative, working with the rider when they come in. And then there's probably some more common replacement parts. I'm imagining probably like handlebars, or you mentioned gearing or cranks. Those are probably more common parts, correct?
Yes, yeah, there's a variety of parts you can order from the various companies. The cranks are a little bit more of a challenge because our bike industry has had its head up its proverbial butt when it comes to crank arms. In adult bikes, if you're 4'9" or 6'5", for the last 100 years, they said, "Ooh, you can have 170 or 172 or 175 millimeter cranks," and that's so far from reality. It's unbelievable. And so it's something that we've got easy access to cranks as short as 130 millimeters, and much longer than the 175. But it's rare you need much longer. It's a lot of time with disabilities you need shorter cranks. That helps the muscles that are reciprocating up over the top of the stroke to actually get the tightness in the knee sometimes is an issue. So having a smaller crank is incredibly important for a lot of types of disabilities.
Okay, Brent, I'm gonna go down the nuts and bolts side, the dollars and cents of this. We know that running a bicycle retail store at, currently operating costs are high, margins are low, and we're talking what I would say is a heavily service, labor focused, time intensive, commitment to making sure we have the right product fit to the rider. So when it comes to this assessment, the pricing, the margin, anything that you could mention, as far as how we're pricing these services, or special considerations to keep in mind, because we want to do the good work, but we also want to stay in business too at the same
Yeah.
time. So,
Well, and that's, like I said, a number of years ago, we had to make a decision. Do we scale back, or do we really, ramp up and do a lot more? When we took a look at that decision, it was something that we're like, well, we had to really look at our cost structure in a more detailed way if we're really going to do more of it. If you're doing just one or two adaptive bikes a year and helping a local family or local organization out, if you want to lose money on it, that's fine. You feel good about it, no matter which adaptive bike. If you make money or don't make money, you feel good about it. But if you're really going to do this on a regular basis, we charge an assessment fee for that initial consultation, because then we do have to write a quote. We have to wait for the caseworker to get it through their approval process. We have to then order the parts in and build the bike. Once we fulfill the bike, on average, it's 2 to 6 months before we get our money. So that's something that is a real consideration. And sometimes you're chasing money with government organizations. The turnover in caseworkers has been extraordinary the last couple of years, and it's sometimes a nightmare just getting the money. You're going to get the money, but it's just sometimes you really have to jump through hoops. Some of the bikes that are more that out of the box disability bikes, some of those are available direct to consumer. So it's something that when we have that come in, we do have to charge a building fee, because again, if they're getting it in a box at home, we're doing an additional service. So it's something we have to charge for building it. As far as the modifications, again, if you're putting a handlebar on somebody's mountain bike, well, if you're putting a handlebar on a disability bike, you've got a shop rate, you have to make that. And so that's really normal as far as the pricing structure of it. So you don't have to feel like you have to give it away, because your dentist doesn't give their service away, your chiropractor doesn't give their service away. And so that's something that you don't have to feel bad about, making sure that the price is going to keep your doors open, because with your business shuttering, you're of no service to anybody.
right.
So you really do have to make a proper analysis of that. And we've done a good job with that. So we feel very comfortable about investing that amount of time, because some of the bikes, it really is a lot of time, but we also have that labor, that assessment fee, the billing time and everything that we've got it built in, so that it doesn't hurt us to help people.
Yeah, that's an important information you passed out there. I forgot that there might be special funding coming through, so that billing process can be a nightmare, can take a little time, but eventually you will get paid, but it's just like another consideration and factor. What about Brent, the space requirements. I noticed as you were showing the bikes, I mean, I would feel that some of these multiple wheeled bikes can take up a lot of space on the floor. Is there any
Yeah.
ways you've solved that issue at your
Well,
store?
I'm just going to show you up on our ceiling here. We've got a variety of the hoists. And so, Julie, you want to turn on a light switch over there? We'll show them we use electric hoists to get a lot of these up and down. And I tell you, it really helps a lot. We have some families that are like, whoa, that's kind of cool. So they get these for their garage at home. So I'm going to just
Drop it down.
Yeah.
Oh, that is great. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the single bike hoists you can get as little as $99, and they plug in with electric, extension cord rather than being hardwired. So it's really not a difficult thing for a shop to install those if they have the ceiling height and they have something to attach it to up top.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this podcast, definitely go ahead and check out the video on YouTube when you get home. Not only can you see this electric hoist, but just how clean and well presented the shop is. I love how we're doing this podcast in the store. Thank you so much for that. I have just a couple more questions, and it's really about some additional resources for the rider, even when they take the bike home. So I'm thinking about we send people home with a new owner's manual when they take a bike home, or maybe even telling them the safe places to ride or local greenways. Is that kind of the same thing when your customers are going home? Do you send them with anything, a new bike owner's manual, or is any other special information maybe that you're including that we might not be used to, with a typical bike sale?
Yeah, we have a document that we email them because, again, print stuff, it gets lost easy, so we email it to them. But it's different training strategies as far as the making them more competent with steering, more competent with pedaling. We recommend they get in a very big, like even stadium size is even better, open area, and just let the person ride. Because again, sometimes, especially the ones that are having an uncooperative body, there's spasticity or cognitive impairment. If you put them on a sidewalk, they're like in the grass, in the grass, in the grass. It's so frustrating. Get them into a huge open area and just give them the freedom of riding. Just like they navigate from one room of the house to the other, they figure it out, even with some profound disabilities. You get them on a bike and just turn them into this huge open area. It's transformative. So that really helps a lot. We also recommend playing games on the bike, really just having as much fun as you can. And then it has maintenance tips on as far as is that basic care, because most people really don't read an owner's manual. So we've kept this as few words as possible as far as what you got to do to maintain it. Just tell them every month to 3 months, depending upon the bike, top off the tires. There are some types of road racing bikes that, yes, we have to put tire in almost every time we ride it. A lot of the traditional mountain bikes and disability bikes, if they've got a 1.5 or 2 inch tire, you're putting that air in every 6 or 8 or 10 weeks is just fine. It's not as critical. But then also lubricating the bike when it gets wet to keep rust and everything at bay. And then we also encourage, especially for the kids with more cognitive or physical disabilities compared to the adults that live, let's say, independently, they're going to have to get their bike no matter what. But sometimes we have to retrain the families to let's have the kid do as absolutely much of this as possible. So even getting the bike at the beginning of the day, putting it away at the end of the day, have the kids' hands on the bike as they're doing that. It builds that repetition. It builds that responsibility. It builds that habit, that familiarity with the bike. Even locking the bike. We have a couple of locks that we really work with a lot of the kids with disabilities. And putting that key in is actually a skill. Putting it around a bike is actually a skill. Looking for something to lock it up is actually a skill. So we give the families a blessing that almost every family loves and takes this well. We say, parents, make your life as easy as possible. Make your child's life as difficult as possible. Expect them to do extraordinary things and only be there for emergency intervention. Really let them have some of those mistakes, just like you and I did when we were kids growing up. If we fall once in a while, you hate to say big deal, but it's not a big deal as you think. But very, very few parents over the years have gotten offended by me saying that, do less for their kids. But it really is do less for them, because you have to raise them into adulthood with skills. Otherwise, you're putting a disabled person with disabilities into the community. Let's get them to do as absolutely much as they can. Biking is a portion, and it's a good transition into a lot of other things that they can do.
Yeah, I am thrilled you're doing the work that you're doing. And interestingly enough, you and I connected on doing this podcast, and since we've been planning now for, I think, almost the past month or so for this call, several people have reached out to me because there are very few retailers doing work with adaptive cyclists, even retailers who are working on wheelchairs. And I think we as an industry could do so much better serving the needs of adaptive cyclists. And Brent, I know it's important to you that retailers really realize how we can service this need, sometimes with what we already have in store, and make the segue into servicing the needs of adaptive riders. So what else would you say to a retailer listening right now about, why they might want to consider, serving this diverse customer base?
Well, first of all, with as many challenges there are in our industry, it used to be looking for every kind of business. Right now, for everybody. But when you take a look at all the different things that are thrown at us right now, it's like the clamp is being put on the IBD harder and harder and harder. Sometimes it's difficult to justify. It's like, dude, how long do we want to stay in this industry? The adaptive bikes, I can tell you this, it makes my heart sing every time I work with every single adaptive customer. And so that's something that, it's kind of screwed up my retirement plans, because I think I'll be doing this for a while. And when we take a look at the things that we're doing for these families, whether it's an adult with disabilities or a child with disabilities, or how it rubs off onto their family and friends, there's a real impact there. And we also see just what we consider that traditional bike customer coming in. When they see us working with these bikes and with these families, it's something that rubs off on them. It helps endear them to your business, and they really feel good about referring other customers to it, because they know your heart's in the right spot, but also they know that you can solve some problems that maybe other shops aren't doing.
So we're saying start contacting the local charities, get involved, and just slowly kind of learn along the way, and contact some physical therapists, and just get involved, and it'll just naturally kind of go from there.
Yeah. And again, don't worry about doing all the custom fabrication and everything early on. If you develop enough of a clientele and you're really trying to reach your stretch your wings, so to speak, those are going to be kind of obvious that you want to do that next leap. But there's a lot of this that you can do without having to really reinvent things.
Brent, you are a tremendous resource, and I know you mentioned several brands, which I will link to in the show notes. So if you're listening, go ahead. When you get home, you can link to some of the brands. Brent, what if some of the people listening, our listeners, wanted more information and they wanted to ask you directly? Would you share a contact? Are you available to answer any questions that people might have?
Yeah, they can scoot me an email, Brent@Emerys.com, Brent@Emerys, Emerys.com. One thing I'm adamant about is have a great subject line in your email that actually says what you want to do. There's, you get so much junk emails that it's like, man, have a great subject line and tell me right what you actually want to accomplish there.
Brent, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show, for sharing what you're doing. Kudos to you for helping so many people, and for being in business for so long. It's definitely been a roller coaster ride, and I'm really glad that you're a part of it. So thank you so much.
Well, I thank you. We really see that the NBDA has stepped up their game lately, and we appreciate everything that you do.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks to your wife too for being in the background there on
Oh yeah, she's been
video
settling
for us.
bikes and helping out. It's been awesome.
Have a nice afternoon. Thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Bicycle Retail Radio. This podcast is designed specifically for the bicycle industry, dedicated to strengthening our retailers and cycling community. If it is your first episode, we urge you to take the time and listen to our past episodes.
The NBDA values the importance of deep interpersonal connections, and our Retailer Summit is designed to be a catalyst for just that. Attending the Retailer Summit in May ensures you meet the right people who know the bicycle industry, respect your business, and want to help you grow, both personally and professionally. It's an easy way to take your business to the next level through networking, engaging with panelists and speakers, problem solving with your fellow attendees, followed by ample riding time on world-class trails. Go to nbda.com/retailer summit for more information and to get your tickets today.